Do you find yourself unable to stop thinking about someone, even when you desperately want to? Their face appears in your dreams, their name causes your heart to race, and somehow they've become the invisible measuring stick against which you compare everyone else. It's exhausting, isn't it? This relentless mental fixation that refuses to release its grip no matter how much you reason with yourself. This psychological phenomenon goes deeper than simple attraction or longing. Carl Jung, the pioneering Swiss psychiatrist who peered into the darkest corners of the human psyche, uncovered profound insights about why certain people become psychological magnets for us, drawing our thoughts back to them with almost gravitational force. What Jung discovered was startling. Obsession is rarely about the other person at all. Instead, it's an elaborate psychological mechanism, a window into your own unconscious needs, unresolved wounds, and fragmented parts of self. When we become obsessed, something far more significant than romantic interest is at play. Jung exposed how these fixations act as messengers from our deeper selves, attempting to communicate through the language of obsession. The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances, Jung wrote. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But what happens when this reaction becomes explosive rather than balanced? When one personality consumes your thoughts to the point of obsession? Jung recognized that our psyche naturally seeks wholeness, constantly working to integrate fragmented aspects of ourselves into consciousness. When we become obsessed with someone, it signals a powerful inner process, attempting to restore psychological balance. But rather than recognizing this internal dynamic, we mistakenly locate its source in the external person. Think of your conscious mind as a house with many rooms. Some are well lit and frequently visited. These represent aspects of yourself you're comfortable with and acknowledge. But the house also contains locked rooms filled with qualities, desires, and capacities you've rejected or never developed. Jung called this your unconscious. When you become obsessed with someone, it's as though they've accidentally been given a key to those locked rooms. Something about them, perhaps a quality they possess, or an emotion they evoke, resonates with these disowned parts of yourself. Your obsession becomes the mind's attempt to reclaim these lost aspects through external means. Jung observed that the psychological rule says that when an inner situation is not made conscious, it happens outside as fate. Your obsession isn't random misfortune, it's unconscious material, manifesting as an external fixation. Understanding this transforms obsession from a source of suffering into an opportunity for profound self-discovery. At the core of many obsessions lies what Jung called the shadow, the repository of everything we've denied, repressed, or disowned about ourselves. These aren't necessarily negative qualities. Often they're capacities for greatness, vulnerability, or passion that were somehow deemed unacceptable during our formative years. Jung explained that in spite of its function as a reservoir for human darkness, or perhaps because of this, the shadow is the seat of creativity. When someone captivates your attention to the point of obsession, they're often embodying shadow elements you've disowned but desperately need to reclaim. This creates a fascinating psychological dynamic. The more you've suppressed certain qualities within yourself, the more powerfully you'll be drawn to people who embody them. It's as though your psyche is trying to recapture these exiled parts of yourself through external means. For example, if you were raised to be responsible and serious, you might become obsessed with someone spontaneous and carefree. If you've denied your own emotional sensitivity, you might fixate on someone who expresses feelings freely. The intensity of attraction often directly correlates with how thoroughly you've suppressed these qualities in yourself. But here's the psychological trap. As long as you project these disowned qualities onto another person, rather than developing them within yourself, the obsession will persist. You become dependent on them to express what you cannot, creating a powerful bond that's difficult to break. Your fixation isn't love or even attraction in the conventional sense. It's a misplaced attempt at psychological reclamation. Jung's theory of the anima, the feminine archetype within men, and animus, the masculine archetype within women, provides another powerful lens for understanding obsession. These aren't simply gender stereotypes, but symbolic representations of particular energies and capacities within the psyche. When someone becomes the object of your obsession, they often serve as what Jung called a hook for your anima or animus projections. In other words, they become the external embodiment of your internal opposite gender energy. This creates a powerful psychological illusion. You're not seeing the actual person. You're seeing your own unconscious contents projected onto them. This explains why obsessions often involve idealizing someone to an unrealistic degree or feeling an inexplicable, fated connection despite minimal actual interaction. The projection-making factor is the anima, or rather the unconscious, as represented by the anima, Jung explained. When under the spell of anima-animus projection, you essentially fall in love with parts of your own unconscious mind rather than the actual person. The feeling of intense connection is real, but its source isn't what you think. Look for these signs of anima-animus possession. Do you feel the person completes you in some fundamental way? Have you created elaborate fantasies about them despite limited actual interaction? Do you sense a mysterious, almost mystical connection transcending ordinary relationships? These suggest you're experiencing this form of projection. Perhaps Jung's most relevant contribution to understanding obsession is his theory of complexes, emotionally charged clusters of memories, thoughts, perceptions, and wishes organized around a common theme. Complexes form through emotional experiences, especially early childhood wounds, and operate autonomously within the psyche. A complex is an agglomeration of associations, a sort of picture of a more or less complicated psychological nature, sometimes of traumatic character, sometimes simply of a painful and highly toned character, Jung explained. These psychological bundles have their own energy and can essentially hijack your consciousness when triggered. Obsession often indicates an activated complex. Something about the person has stimulated a network of associations tied to formative emotional experiences. This explains why obsessions feel so overwhelming and irrational. They're fueled by the concentrated emotional energy of the complex. For instance, if you experienced abandonment in childhood, you might develop what Jung would call an abandonment complex. Later in life, someone whose behavior resonates with this complex, perhaps through emotional inconsistency or perceived rejection, can trigger an obsessive response seemingly disproportionate to the actual situation. This is why obsessions often follow patterns. People frequently become obsessed with different individuals who nevertheless share specific qualities or trigger similar emotional responses. The obsession isn't really about these specific people. It's about the complex being activated. At the heart of all obsession lies the psychological mechanism Jung called projection, the unconscious transfer of psychological content from subject to object. In simpler terms, you unknowingly attribute your own unconscious material to another person, then respond to it as though it originated from them. Projections change the world into the replica of one's own unknown face, Jung observed. When obsessed, you're not interacting with the actual person, but with aspects of yourself you've projected onto them. This creates a profound psychological illusion that feels completely real. This explains why obsessions are so resistant to reality testing. Friends might point out flaws in the person you're fixated on, or remind you of their unavailability. Yet these rational arguments do little to diminish the obsession. That's because the obsession isn't based on objective reality, but on powerful projections that distort perception. The more unconscious the projection, the more powerful its hold. Unconsciousness makes no difference between the ego and others, but puts them on the same level, Jung noted. This explains why obsession creates such boundary confusion. Psychologically, you've merged yourself with the other person through projection. Breaking the spell requires the painful work of reclaiming these projections. This means recognizing that the qualities or capacities you've attributed to them actually originate within you. As Jung wrote, the psychological rule says that when an inner situation is not made conscious, it happens outside as fate. By making these projections conscious, you transform obsession into self-knowledge. Jung's insights offer practical pathways for transforming obsession from psychological prison to opportunity for growth. He developed a technique called active imagination to engage directly with unconscious content. When obsessive thoughts arise, don't suppress them. Instead, engage them imaginatively. Allow the image of the person to arise in your mind, then initiate an internal dialogue. Ask what they represent to you, what qualities they embody that you need to develop, what wounds they've activated. Pay particular attention to dreams featuring the person you're obsessed with. Jung considered dreams the direct expression of the unconscious psychic activity. Dreams often reveal the true psychological function someone serves in your inner world, showing them symbolically rather than literally. Identify qualities in the person you're obsessed with that particularly fascinate or disturb you. These are likely shadow elements requiring integration. Ask yourself, how might I develop these qualities in myself rather than fixating on them in another? This isn't about becoming identical to the other person, but about reclaiming projected aspects of yourself. As Jung noted, to confront a person with his shadow is to show him his own light. Track the emotional patterns activated in your obsession. When do thoughts of this person intensify? What emotional states precede obsessive episodes? By mapping these patterns, you can identify the underlying complex and begin addressing its root causes rather than remaining caught in its symptoms. Obsession, viewed through Jung's psychological framework, represents a profound opportunity for self-understanding. What feels like a fixation on another person is actually an encounter with disowned aspects of yourself seeking integration. The very intensity that makes obsession so painful also makes it potentially transformative. Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart, Jung wrote. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. Obsession keeps you looking outside, dreaming of fulfillment through another. Integration happens when you look inside, recognizing the projected needs, qualities, and wounds that fuel your fixation. This doesn't mean the other person lacks genuine qualities or that the connection isn't meaningful. Rather, it recognizes that obsession magnifies and distorts whatever real basis might exist for attraction or interest. By withdrawing projections and reclaiming your psychological material, you become capable of seeing others as they actually are, not as carriers of your unconscious content. The journey from obsession to integration isn't about suppressing your feelings or forcing yourself to get over someone. It's about understanding what these feelings truly represent and redirecting their energy towards psychological development. As Jung observed, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. The discomfort of withdrawing projections leads to authentic self-knowledge. When you recognize that your obsession reflects a call to wholeness, its grip begins to loosen. The person who once seemed to hold the key to your happiness is revealed as a mirror, showing what you need to develop within yourself. This recognition doesn't happen instantaneously. Integration is a process, not an event. But with each projection you withdraw, each shadow element you reclaim, the obsession gradually transforms from painful fixation to valuable insight. So the next time obsessive thoughts arise, remember, this isn't just about them. It's about you, your journey toward wholeness, your unacknowledged needs, your potential for growth. By turning toward these insights rather than fixating on another person, you begin the alchemical process of transforming obsession into integration, projection into self-knowledge, suffering into growth.